Hello, 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 and welcome back to Murder, She Told. My name is Madison, and we are going to be talking about honestly, this true crime case is one of a couple true crime cases that were basically the catalyst to me even wanting to go forward with this channel in the first place. We are going to be discussing the murder and abduction and assumed murder, presumed murder of Evelyn Hernandez and her 5-year-old son at the time, Alexis Hernandez. And, we'll get more into why this was such an important case to me. I have mentioned it before in previous videos. I've mentioned it before on TikTok. Please follow my TikTok. The link is in the bio. That's where I do documentary recommendations and you see previews of the videos that are coming up next. So stay tuned for that. But before we get more into the story of Evelyn Hernandez, we are going to just say hi. This is Murder, She Told. I am a true crime fanatic aficionado, if you will. My name is Madison, and if you like true crime and if you're interested in hearing stories that you probably haven't heard before or stories that you may not have had the time to research yourself before, this is a channel for you. If you like the sound of that and you want to stay, please like this video, comment. It helps me boost me in the algorithm, and subscribe and click that notification bell so you know the next time I post. So today we are finally going to be discussing Evelyn Hernandez. Now, Evelyn Hernandez's case is something that I referenced in the prequel part 2, where I'm talking about missing white woman syndrome. And I mentioned it in a TikTok I've done before. Regarding missing white woman syndrome, her case is one of the best examples of missing white woman syndrome that is just so perfectly comparable to reveal how we live in a place where there are two worlds, there are two justice systems, and there are two types of people on this planet. The people that are valued, the people that are looked for, the people that are put on national news, the people that are cared about in that way, and the other people, which are people of color, marginalized people that live in a different reality in terms of what this country is. I like to say we live in the real reality of this country, and white people live in the fake reality or the illusion of this country. That's how I describe it. But this is one of those cases that perfectly illustrates what missing white woman syndrome really is and the material effects that it has on people of color and women of color and our experiences. And, of course, both of these cases, and we'll get more into detail about what I'm talking about, but particularly Evelyn Hernandez's case was super similar to a very high profile case called the Laci Peterson case. Almost exactly the same in terms of how their bodies were found and this and that. We'll get into more detail about that later on in the video. But it couldn't have been a more karmic comparison that the universe kind of put on trial for us to be able to see how, in fact, the missing white woman syndrome in real time really affects people. It's not some made up thing that people of color want to complain about now. It's true, it's real, and this case is one of the best examples to prove that it exists. Now, like I said before, I've mentioned Evelyn Hernandez. Her case is part of why I decided to make this channel. And I just like to talk about a little bit in terms of how I came to find out about her case existing. The Laci Peterson case, I believe I was maybe 9, no older than 9 at all, when the whole case started to kind of come about and, start to bubble to the surface, and then subsequently the months and change of, finding out everything that happened when she went missing, and him, Scott Peterson being caught trying to flee to Mexico. All of this stuff is very front and center of mind because I love true crime and because I was a kid that was enthralled with this story at the time. Like, every day on ABC News, which is the news station my parents watched before we went to school, every day there'd be a new update. There'd be breaking news on Scott and Laci's relationship, on Laci Peterson, on different things about the case or her family's feelings about Scott, all of these interviews. And so when I heard about the Evelyn Hernandez case and heard about how similar it was and heard that it happened almost exactly around the same time as Laci Peterson's disappearance, I was shocked that I hadn't heard about it sooner. One episode they were talking about the Laci Peterson case. And like I said before, the missing white woman syndrome thing is not just about what happens during the time in the news coverage that they get during that moment. It's the news coverage they get for years subsequently after. How many documentaries on JonBenet Ramsey have there been? I think probably in the 50s at this point. I feel like a new one comes out every couple of years. And that's what I mean when it comes to the nuances of missing white woman syndrome, because it's not just about then, it's also about the fact that we're still talking about Laci Peterson's case till this day. She can still command a huge audience to this day, and it's related to the fact that she got so much news time and priority at the time. So, obviously, nearly 20 years later, they're talking about the Laci Peterson case on their podcast. And at the end, Georgia kind of fits in. She's like, I just want to say something really quick. There's a woman named Evelyn Hernandez who died a similar way. She kind of really quickly went through her story. And to be fair, there isn't a lot about Evelyn Hernandez's story that you can research, but she just kind of really quickly went through her story and said, she's called the Other Laci Peterson, da-da-da-da. Their cases were really similar, boo-boo-boo-boo, and kind of ended it there. So that was the first time I heard about Evelyn Hernandez's case. But for me, what always nagged at me as it relates to how they decided to shoehorn her story in is, you're aware of the climate. You're aware of the fact that Laci Peterson's story got a million times more news coverage than Evelyn Hernandez's story could ever garner. That's the reason why you're bringing up Evelyn Hernandez's story, is because nobody has heard about it. And instead of not doing the Laci Peterson case, a case that has been rehashed, and hashed again 30 million times at this point, almost 20 years later, you decide to shoehorn Evelyn Hernandez's case at the tail end of Laci Peterson's case instead of the opposite way around, so that, you can kind of get the points for like pointing out the fucked up justice system without actually doing anything really concrete to correct that. This woman's name, as I've said before, overwhelmingly in the true crime space, is the Other Laci Peterson. She's not known as Evelyn Hernandez. Evelyn Hernandez does not garner any real emotion by the public because a lot of people don't know who the fuck she was and what she went through. And you have a platform of millions of listeners weekly. People come in to listen to your true crime stories and they praise you for how you tell them. And instead of making a point to be like, you know what, I'm going to use this time to talk about Evelyn Hernandez and then relate it back to Laci Peterson after and flip the script instead of what people are expecting, you kind of did the expected thing. You know what I mean? You talked about Laci Peterson at length, even though we all know the story. All of us of a particular age know the story. And then decide to fit Evelyn Hernandez in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of you talking about the story in the podcast. And it's like, you think you're doing something, you think you're being revolutionary by pointing out the inequity, but you're doing and continuing the exact thing that keeps this woman being called the Other Laci Peterson instead of being known by her name as Evelyn Hernandez. That long-winded explanation about why I'm not as big of a stan for My Favorite Murder as it relates to, people of color, marginalized people, and how they represent them on their platform, but also combining that with how I learned about the Evelyn Hernandez case, I think it's important that she gets her own fucking episode. Yes, like I said, there's not a lot of information, like a lot, and there's not as many details, and we'll get into why as we get into the story, but she still deserves her own true crime episode. Because arguably, her story is worse, and we'll get into why. But again, those are just my feelings. If you're a murderino, I am a rehabilitated murderino. I used to be addicted. Now I kind of enjoy as I want, kind of like an a la carte situation. But that's how I found out about who Evelyn Hernandez was, and I was instantly inspired to really like go full throttle for this YouTube channel. So rest in peace, baby angel, to your unborn baby, to you, and Alexis as well. I hope that your case is solved at some point. I hope your family can find justice for what happened to you. And you are going to be centered on my channel, babe. Love you. Let's get into the story about Evelyn Hernandez. So Evelyn Hernandez was Salvadorian. She was born in El Salvador on February 13th, 1978. Let me double check. I was wrong. She was born on February 23rd, 1978 in El Salvador, and she immigrated to the Bay Area when she was 14 years old. So obviously you can do the math. In the 90s, roughly around, the early 90s, she immigrated. She began going to high school. She got a job. She worked at Costco, and she also worked at a local hotel in the Bay Area. And while she was in high school, and she got pregnant. She was dating somebody, she got pregnant, she was a teen mom, and ultimately became a single mom. She loved her kid, and that is one thing that the people who talk about her, who have been interviewed about her story, who care about her, always said that she loved her kid a lot. And so she was excited about this pregnancy, even though she was super young, and she had just kind of immigrated to the United States, to the Bay Area, but she was going to be a teen mom. So she got pregnant, and what she ultimately ended up doing was investing in herself, and she started taking classes to become a licensed vocational nurse to get better pay and to be able to spend more time with her baby when her baby came. And just like that, in November of 1996, which is the same year that I was born, she gave birth to Alexis Hernandez, and she was completely overjoyed. Her family always said that she loved Alexis with all her heart. She was a wonderful mom and would do anything for Alexis, and loved that baby to death, changed her life for that baby, and completely began to step into the role as a mother, and everyone said she was natural at it. So like I said, because of this, baby, she became a single mom, unfortunately, but she decided to become a licensed vocational nurse. She moved to a neighborhood called Crocker, Amazon, and I'm not really sure. Bay Area people, let me know if I wrote that wrong, typed that wrong, if that's a real place, because it's not sounding familiar to me. But if it is, let a bitch know. Type it down below if it's a real place. But she moved to a neighborhood that I typed up in my notes called Crocker, Amazon. Around this time, as she's stepping into motherhood, working as a vocational nurse, moved to this new neighborhood, she, being a working mom, a working single mom, she met a man named Herman Aguilera, who was a 36-year-old man who worked for a limousine company. He was a driver for a limousine company, and that they met they crossed paths somehow, and she instantly fell in love with him. That's another thing that a lot of people in her life said. She was head over heels for Herman, and he was good to Alexis, even though Alexis was not his child. So, they were in this relationship. It seemed to be going really well. Obviously, she was in her 20s. He was in his 30s, late 30s. There's a bit of an age gap, but they seemed happy. They were spending a lot of time together. It seemed like, they're getting more and more serious. He seemed like a really good guy. And like I said before, he cared for her child, Alexis, who was not his child, which is a big deal when you're a single mom. You really, really pay attention to those who love you and your kid instead of making you choose, or someone who's combative about it. So relationship was going great. Relationship was going fine for however long. And he was still working as a driver at the limousine service. She was working as a vocational nurse. And lo and behold, Evelyn gets pregnant again. Now, by this time, Alexis is around 5-ish years old. He's around 5 years old. So they had been kind of dating for a while, and they had been dating for a good amount of time. And Evelyn was super excited about this second pregnancy. She was excited to have, for Alexis to have a sibling. She was excited because she felt so in love, and she was happy that she was going to be having a kid with Herman Aguilera. For all she knew, for all she understood, they were in a very committed, exclusive, loving relationship. And so this seemed like the next natural step, and she wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. So she was just excited by the news. But, and this is a huge red flag, ladies, her friends noticed that when she told Herman about the baby, and they'd be around talking about the baby, planning for the baby, planning things for the 9-month pregnancy, like baby showers and stuff like that, he was not involved. He seemed completely detached, and he did not seem excited at all about the baby. It seemed like the excitement was completely one way, and that was only on the side of Evelyn, and he was completely checked out once he found out he got her pregnant. Huge red flag. Ladies, pay attention. So Evelyn's friends bring this to her attention, and are just like, we just think it's kind of weird that you're so excited about this baby, and Herman doesn't seem like he could be bothered by it, like he could give a fuck that you were pregnant. He doesn't seem like he cares. He's not treating you any differently. He's not excited. He's not shopping with you for the baby. He seems checked out. And we just want you to know that we noticed that. I don't know if you noticed that, but I think, you should investigate that. And I think those are good friends. Obviously, I've been in friendships where, their partners or whatever didn't seem like the best people. And it can be difficult, especially when up until she was pregnant, she was in this hugely loving relationship. So it's hard, especially now that she's pregnant, to bring a conversation like that to her front door. But I really appreciate her friends for being like, we clocked this girl. I know you're pregnant as hell, and I know you're excited for this baby, but what we notice seems strange to us because he doesn't seem like he cares. And we want you to get all the answers about that before, it's too late, or before, whatever. So basically, Evelyn, with this in mind, gets in contact with Herman Aguilera's mom. And she's just like, we're having a baby. I'm really excited, but it does not seem like Herman's excited at all. Has he told you anything? Has he talked to you about the baby? Has he said anything? Is he just, holding it in? Has he told you he's excited? All of that stuff. She's trying to get the tea from his mama, okay? And the mom was quiet for a while on the phone. And finally was just like, look, Evelyn, he's married. And basically told her how long he'd been married, who he was married to, all of this stuff. Mind you, Evelyn is on her second baby. She's been dating this man for a while. She was so in love with him. She's pretty pregnant at this point. And, she was just looking for, okay, maybe he's getting cold feet about the relationship, or, she was looking for just maybe he's scared and doesn't know how to express it to her, information like that. But she found out that he's married. And again, the age gap is pretty big. She's in her early-ish 20s. He's in his late-ish 30s. And apparently he had been married for quite some time. Obviously, the entire time they were together. So, of course, Evelyn fell into a huge depression. She was really, really sad, but, she had Alexis, and, he made her happy. He was her world. And she decided, you know what? I'm obviously still going to go through this pregnancy. As a single mom, I've done it before. I can support 2 kids on my own. I'm just, going to continue to move through life with love. And, he deceived me, obviously, but I'm still going to have this baby, and it's going to be okay. So she rallied and continued on with her pregnancy. And, her and Herman were no longer together at that point when she found out. So on May 1st, 2002, Evelyn and Alexis Hernandez were seen together. She was dropping off Alexis at his elementary school, Buena Vista Elementary, but that was the very last time she was seen alive in public. She was 24 years old at the time, obviously very pregnant, and that was the very last time anyone had seen her alive. May 7th rolls around, and this is Evelyn's actual pregnancy due date, is May 7th, okay? May 7th rolls around. She doesn't show up to the doctor. Huge red flag. No one has seen Alexis since May 1st. No one has seen Evelyn since May 1st. And since she doesn't show up to the doctor, people are calling Herman, trying to figure out where the fuck she is, what the fuck's going on, is she okay, all of this stuff. And that's when he decides to file a missing persons report for both Evelyn and Alexis 6 days after they were last seen in public alive. Okay? So obviously we're starting off on a suspicious with Herman. Obviously he was married, she's pregnant, he wasn't excited about the pregnancy, and the last time she was seen alive by a bunch of people to corroborate that was May 1st. She was never seen alive after that again by anybody, and then he decides to file a missing persons report 6 days after May 1st. On the day that she was supposed to deliver and be in the hospital delivering their baby. Very, very fucking suspicious. Right? Like, come on. So, that happens. Are you starting to see the similarities with Laci's case? Yeah, exactly. Now, this is where I get fucking pissed. And I'm just going to pause it right here with this story. Well, I'll say this. Herman files his missing persons report 6 days after she was last seen on May 7th. The police don't do anything about the missing persons report. They don't try and pursue it. Their excuse is, she probably left to El Salvador to be with her family because she has no family here. And, she probably went to have the baby there because, Herman had filed the report and had told them about the fact that he's married and da-da-da-da. So they all knew that. They all knew that he was married. She was pregnant by a married man, and they just assumed and wrote her off to be in El Salvador with her family having her baby, and just decided, the lifestyle in California, immigrating here was a mistake. My life's a mess, and I'm going to go to where I have support. And we're going to put a pin in that so I can complain for a little bit. I might be long-winded, so stay tuned. Here's my problem with this. This is not the first time you'll hear this excuse by the police departments all over the country when it comes to a missing woman of color, okay? Or person of color or marginalized individual, period, okay? This is not the first time you're going to hear this running away excuse. How does it make sense Tell me, you think with your mind, you know there are travel restrictions when a woman is pregnant. She was seen 6 days before her due date, alive. She has not been seen since. Okay? This guy makes a report the day she's supposed to be in the hospital in labor, having her second child. She doesn't show up to the hospital, which is out of character for a woman who loves her kids, wanted this child, and was going to continue with her pregnancy. That's how she ended things off. We're not together. I'm going to have this baby by myself no matter what. And she was a wonderful mother. That's one of the tenets about her. So why would she blow off her pregnancy due date appointment where she's supposed to be going into labor? Who would blow that off? She's 9 fucking months pregnant. And you think she hopped on a plane between May 1st and now May 7th to go to El Salvador and travel to El Salvador to have her child when she's 9 months pregnant? How does that, and to me, what it comes down to, because as a person who isn't a police officer, isn't a detective, just as a human person with feelings, there's so many suspicious things. So many. If they poked holes, if they poked into it a little more, they'd be like, okay, he's bringing us this, but the last time anyone saw her was the first, so why is he just saying something now? Why is he just putting in a report now? And why would she be traveling at 9 months pregnant? Why would she miss her own due date? Excuse me, I'm burping. I'm sucking in too much air because I'm upset. But why would that make sense to, especially someone who's trained to look for suspicious things to see if people are alive, dead, or whatever, and be able to find evidence in order to figure out what the fuck happened to them? They're the final stop. They're the final boss. This is where people go to when they have exhausted all of their personal options to trying to find someone's whereabouts. Then they're the ones being like, well, she probably just ran away to El Salvador to have her kid because her life's a mess here in America. So, that's probably what happened. What part of this story that I just told you isn't suspicious? What part of this story isn't suspicious? Who misses their due date? Dude. The police, that's a conversation for another day, child. But this is not going to be the first or the last. This may be the first, but this will not be the last time you will hear the dumbass, they probably ran away excuse about a woman of color, person of color, or marginalized individual in this series, period. It's going to be a common theme. And, furthermore, sorry, because the thing that gets me so upset is anybody knows who loves true crime, likes SVU, even likes NCIS for 48 hours, things like that, know that there's a very small window of time, okay, to figure out what happened to somebody. And time is of the essence. Time can mean the having physical evidence and not having physical evidence. Time could be the difference from, catching someone alive or catching someone dead. Time can mean so much. And they know if someone is missing, it's automatically a time-sensitive situation. They could be kidnapped. They could be being held hostage. They could be tortured. And it's not just her. It's her 5-year-old fucking son who has not been seen either. So there's 2 people missing, 1 5 years old. You would think that compassion and the fact that the facts aren't all the way adding up, and if they had done any kind of questioning, they would know that she was last seen on the 1st and he's making a missing persons case, filing a missing persons report on the 7th, and that was her due date, and no one has seen her or her baby since the 1st. Do you see what I mean? And it's crazy because did anyone ever think that Laci Peterson ran away other than, maybe just naysayers or whatever? Did the police handle her case at all in any capacity where they just said, she probably ran away around Christmas being super pregnant? No, because it's peculiar for a pregnant woman to go missing. It's even more peculiar for a pregnant woman to go missing and miss her due date completely. And it's even more peculiar for her 5-year-old son to also be missing and have been seen the last time they were seen alive and corroborated by several people was 6 days before this man decides to come in and put in a missing person report for both of them. Like, there are so many things that should have been, followed through on, questions that should have been asked. But because they just decided to write her off as just some immigrant woman who, decided to leave and, her life was a mess. So she ran away back to El Salvador, and that's, easy. We don't have to investigate anything at that point because she ran away, in my opinion. It's like, what? So many pieces of evidence were lost even between the 1st and the 7th, because he waited those 6 days for that, missing persons report to be filed. And that's only because she was supposed to be at the hospital on the 7th. So other people were expecting her someplace. So that's when he decided to do the missing person shit. But she had been really missing since the 1st of May. So it's like so much evidence has already been lost because this guy waited to come and do a missing persons report on this woman and her child and her unborn child. But on top of that, you just completely hearing the whole story and saying, oh, she completely ran away back to El Salvador, of course. Her life sucks here. She ran away. So even more evidence and, time-sensitive things are being washed away in terms of things to help solve the fucking case about where the fuck she is and even confirming whether she's in El Salvador or not by any fucking person. All of that is just being washed down the drain the more time they just write her off as being some crazy Latinx runaway. You know what I mean? And this is what I mean by the value system and the tiered system of how the police and the institutions completely underscore missing white woman syndrome. They wouldn't have dreamed to have said that to Laci Peterson's family, to Scott Peterson, to any of those people. They wouldn't have dreamed to have, done that to that one case, American Murder, the Annihilation Killer, the guy who killed his wife and 2 baby kids. Like, they wouldn't have dreamed to not have taken that seriously because it automatically is a sus situation. And they jumped on those cases immediately. But because this woman was an immigrant, because she didn't speak English well, because she wasn't upper middle class, because she was going to be a single mom twice over, because of all these things in our Anglo-Saxon, white, Christian, sphere of understanding as a national conscience is so important in terms of how you value people. She was very low on the value scale because of who she was, where she came from, the fact she was a single mom, the fact that she wasn't wealthy. All of these things play a factor in the police deciding we're going to take this seriously and deciding she's a runaway or we're not even going to look further into this. It's just fucked up. So things are already starting off terribly in this case. So let's continue. It's not until weeks later that police begin to suspect foul play when Evelyn Hernandez's wallet is found a block away from the limousine company that Herman Aguilera works for, with full cash in it, and uncashed disability check, her ID. It's just on the street right by Herman Aguilera's workplace. That's when they begin to suspect foul play. What? Foul play from the jump. Assume foul play, then work backwards to not assume foul play. You know what I mean? Prove that there was no foul play before you assume there wasn't any foul play. That's how it's supposed to go. Assume the worst, work backwards to make sure these things aren't true, and then if it's not a foul play situation, you'll find out through the process. But you assume the worst because these situations are so time sensitive. She could have still been alive. She could have been held somewhere. She could be tortured tortured, all sorts of things could be happening to her. But the circumstances before the police even got involved or the missing person report was even filed were so suspicious that it automatically should have been assumed foul play was happening until proven not true. Do you get what I mean? They begin to assume foul play weeks after, when her fucking wallet is found by his work with an uncashed disability check, her ID, bunches of cash. Like, you're just suspecting foul play now, mama? Come on, this guy came in to file a missing persons report on her and her son 6 days after she was last seen alive. It's sus. So that was May. In July of 2002, Evelyn's body was found washed up in the Embarcadero area of San Francisco. If anyone's familiar with the San Francisco area, this is kind of a big touristy area. This is kind of near Fisherman's Wharf. So her body was found washed up on the shore around that area of the San Francisco Bay. And her body was so badly decomposed that all that washed up was a pair of legs and her torso, part of her torso. She was still wearing her maternity clothes that she was last seen in. And there was absolutely no trace of Alexis. And there never has been since he was last seen May 1st, 2002. Absolutely no trace of Alexis. But her body was found. Her decomposing, dismembered body was found washed up near Fisherman's Wharf 2 months after she had been reported missing by Herman Aguilera, who reported her missing 6 days after the last time she was seen alive. Her and her son were seen alive, while also her wallet was found a block away from his job after he filed the missing persons report. So you see. And obviously hindsight is 2020, like if you're getting pieces of information, and obviously the police were being told what Herman was telling them about her life and all of this stuff, so they made an assumption. But because they didn't try and look further into it besides what Herman was telling them about the missing persons report, and they immediately were like, oh, she's gone. She went to El Salvador. Bye, bitch. We're not looking into anything. If they had even poked, if they had even gone to Alexis's elementary school and found out that they hadn't seen them both since the 1st of May, automatically holes in the story would start to form. And I understand hindsight is 2020 because I'm sitting here. This happened in 2002. I'm a black girl. I'm upset. I'm reading about this case and I'm like, these racist ass people, this racist ass system, you know my point of view by now. But it's like there were so many small instances and choices that were made by those in power that could have changed the outcome. Maybe not changed the fact that she was already dead at that point or what have you, but changed the fact that she could have been able to seek justice, because this is where things get sketchy. Her body washes up and Herman's wife, real wife, is the one providing an alibi for Herman. Which to me always seems suspicious, because it's like, okay, I could ask anyone to say, I went over to their house and we watched movies or whatever, and I wasn't where I happened to be, or I wasn't in the same vicinity that a crime happened. You know what I mean? But with alibis, and the reason why alibis only work when they're corroborated by several sources is, people in public, people, who in the family, all of these things, text messages, pinging from your phone, all of these things need to be corroborated in order for the cases to be dropped and be like, okay, your alibi checks out. You weren't there at all. 100%. We know that to be true. In this case, this man, who has been cheating on his wife, got another bitch pregnant, and basically the girl found out through his mom that he had a whole wife the entire time they were together. She decides to keep the baby. He was never excited about the baby, and a couple days before her due date, she comes up missing. Her wallet was found outside a block away from his job, and his wife is the one that gives him an alibi. It's not like the guy who owns a bar down the street, who's not involved at all in the story, or, you know, a taxi driver and who saw something suspicious. Like, none of that. Like, an alibi is such a delicate thing, and you don't just assume it's true, especially if the person providing the alibi directly benefits from a wrongdoing or the disappearance of Evelyn. She directly benefits. He cheated on her. He got her pregnant. Now no Evelyn, no baby, no other kid. We can continue with our lives. So why would they take her alibi for him on his behalf as, okay, so yeah, like, you know, he may still be suspected or be a little suspicious, but we're just going to, you know, she said that he was home that night, so what can we do? That's his wife, and she said this, and he was home at this time, and it's just like, what the fuck? Like, to me, as a not detective person, that's sus, because she benefits from the situation. So why would she say, yeah, my husband killed her, da 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 da? No, if she comes out with an alibi, assume something sketch as hell is happening. What? Like, incompetence does not even begin to describe it. So again, his wife provides him with an alibi. The alibi has never been shared publicly, so I don't know what she said, whether she said he was home with her or whatever the fuck, but the alibi was never shared publicly. The wife gave the alibi, and then, you know, weeks later, after the alibi was given by his wife, Herman completely stops cooperating with the police at all, and to this day, Evelyn Hernandez's murder is unsolved, and the whereabouts of Alexis Hernandez are also unsolved. And by this time, he was born in 96, he would have been 25 like me. He would have been 25 like me. And he has not been seen since May 1st, 2002. And nobody knows about this story? He was 5 years old. He came up missing and has not been seen since May 1st, 2002. He's supposed to be 5 years old right now. And the media attention, the difference, the disparity, the way that we know Laci Peterson's name to be a household name. And people don't know who Evelyn Hernandez is. I barely just figured out who the fuck she is. And her story is unsolved. The whereabouts of her 5-year-old son, who was at the time obviously abducted, you know, are no longer, no one knows where his whereabouts are. And he's supposed to be 25. It's 20 fucking years ago. It's just like atrocious. Completely atrocious. And that's it on the story. You know, we're about to get into other things about media coverage and details about the differences between Laci Peterson and her media coverage shortly, but that's it on what we have about the story. That's all that I could find on the story. Most of my notes, 7 pages. This is 3 pages. This is 3 pages of notes. That's all that I could find about her case. Like, there are 2, I think, at this point that I'm filming this, 2 or maybe 3 videos about the Evelyn Hernandez case on YouTube, true crime-wise, at this point in time. I've sifted several articles to come up with 3 pages, not even 3 complete pages of notes about this woman's case. That's the end of it. That's it. The wife gave the alibi, he stopped cooperating, and that was that. And no one ever knew what happened or anything. And it's still unsolved to this day. It's still an open and active case, considered an open case in San Francisco right now. And this happened in 2002. And if I'm not mistaken, Laci Peterson happened in 2003. Let me just quickly Google it. I have the answers. So Forgive me for messing up the timeline. Laci Peterson. Yeah, no, I didn't mess up the timeline. Laci Peterson was found to be missing on December 24th, 2002. Evelyn Hernandez was missing in May 1st, 2002. Same year. Like, I thought it was maybe give or take a couple of years. Same year, same region of the country, Northern California, similar crime. And you don't know anything about Evelyn Hernandez, and don't be ashamed because you're not supposed to know about her case. You know? Like I said, not even 3 complete pages of details. And how many YouTube videos on Laci Peterson, podcast episodes on Laci Peterson, documentaries on Laci Peterson. They have fucking a 20, I think they're probably going to have a 20-year remembrance about the Laci Peterson case. All of this, it's hard to deny it when you're staring straight at it. It's hard to say, oh, well, that's your opinion, you know, the justice system and this and that, whatever excuses you want to throw. There are very key points in this case for Evelyn Hernandez's sake that things were just done wrong. And nobody knows why, but what I can assume is this. In the Laci Peterson case, you have a beautiful, white, upper middle class pregnant woman who disappears on Christmas Eve. Okay? A story ripe to be sensationalized. The husband's attractive. He seems sympathetic for the most part at the beginning. Then things start to get suspicious, and it turns out that it was him the whole time, right? Evelyn, her family's from here, his family's from here, she's married to him. There's all of these things where the white Anglo-Saxon consciousness of this country automatically makes that story more important than Evelyn Hernandez's story. For Evelyn Hernandez, on top of the fact that she was a 2-time single mom, she had a baby by a married guy, she's an immigrant from El Salvador. What else? You know what I mean? She's a licensed LVN, but she didn't go to 4-year college. She's not upper middle class, 2-time single mom, whatever. That automatically demotes her story in terms of the ability of the American Anglo-Saxon, Christian consciousness to be able to feel bad for her story. So it's not pushed as much as Laci Peterson's story. On top of that, like I said, the other layer is she is an immigrant and her family did not move up to America with her. So her support system, the people that would be beating down the doors, passing out flyers, all the things that doing vigils, doing search parties, all of the things that were done and televised for Laci Peterson could not be done in the same way because her family and support system were in El Salvador. So then we add in the immigrant thing to it, and now she's even lower on the hierarchy. Do you get what I mean? To me, it's like she disappeared before Laci Peterson. One would think if 2 pregnant women wash up in the Bay Area, dismembered, you would think Evelyn's story would be used to inform Laci Peterson's story in terms of suspicions, and maybe they'd work in more of a cyclical way in order to try and solve both of these cases at the same time. Because 2 pregnant women washing up in the Bay Area in 1 year is very sus. But instead, Evelyn Hernandez's story gets pushed aside. She was told that she ran away. All of these things, her story isn't even really seriously put the pressure on to look into. And then Laci Peterson's story comes right before Christmas, and boom, it's all anyone talks about for the next year and a half. And Evelyn's story gets further and further and further away. The few people's lives that she touched who probably are still holding out hope that Alexis is alive at the very least or whatever, need answers. Her family in El Salvador deserves answers. But will they get answers? Probably not. Because it didn't have the same impact as Laci Peterson's story. Why? Racially. Why? Morally. She wasn't married. Why? She's a single mom with 2 kids. Why? She wasn't wealthy. Why? Her family didn't live here, so they couldn't put pressure on local news stations. Why? She didn't speak a lot of English. Why? She was the other woman. There's so many ways, that we are judged in this society and put into this marginalized space. And it's not just based on race. It's socioeconomic class. It's what you do for work. If you're a sex worker, forget it. If you're an addict, forget it. If you have mental health issues, forget it. If you are someone who has a disability, forget it. If you're a single mom, forget it. If all of these things that continue to be points deducted from your self-worth as the country is supposed to value you and see you. And it's just disgusting. Like, I'm turned up because I didn't know it was in the same fucking year. 2002. Same year. Months apart. And they didn't even try to use what they know about Evelyn Hernandez's story to try and inform Laci Peterson's case. They didn't try and use what they knew about Laci Peterson's case to inform Evelyn Hernandez's story. They didn't try to solve both of these cases at the same time. They were like, fuck that Latinx bitch. It's about this white bitch who disappeared on Christmas Eve now. And that's what we're focusing on, because that's what the American people want to see. People, it's cynical. And I talk about how, capitalism and news stations and ads and paid ads and all that stuff add to the intensity of missing white woman syndrome. Go to that video. It's the second part 2 of my prequel. But that all adds up into this situation. And it's just really depressing and disappointing that, the world is like that for real. The world is for real like that. Like, it's crazy. It's just sad. People, let me calm down right quick. Jesus Christ. This country is not for the weak of heart, I promise you. Because, what I keep thinking and what I talked about in my, is this ASMR? Is that, ASMR? Anyway, what I talked about in the Missing White Woman's Syndrome episode is the fact that as a black woman in this country, honey, I know that I've touched people's lives. People love and care about me. I know that to be true, and they probably won't stop until they find out what happened to me, whether they get help from the police or not. But by the looks of it, by a cop, I'm automatically they're not gonna look they're not gonna look for me the same way they looked for Gabby Petito. The internet is not gonna come together to see if the stickers on the back of the van match the stickers on the back of Gabby Petito's van, or the placement of the stickers mean something new. They're not gonna do that for me. I know that, and I live with that. I exist with that. I know that to be true. I'm an Evelyn Hernandez. I'm not a Laci Peterson. And that's just fucked up to know. If I ever went missing, if, something terrible, if I were kidnapped, if something terrible were to ever happen to me, I know in this world, I would be an Evelyn Hernandez case quicker than I'd ever be a Laci Peterson case, child. And that is sickening. Because we preach equality under the law. Do you know what I mean? That's the reason why it's sickening. Because, let me put this down. It's the way we try and come off, the way we try and lord over other countries, the way we try and perceive ourselves as being above it all, as being, we believe that people should be equal. And it's not until black people told you that, not until indigenous people told you that, you did not believe that forever. We believe all men are created equal and deserve to, whatever the fucking pursuit of happiness, whatever the fuck. And then this shit is how the legal system works? You assume she ran away? You just didn't want to look for her. You just didn't want to put resources in trying to find this woman. And she washes up on Fisherman's Wharf. Her torso and her legs only. Her son has never been seen again since May 1st, 2002. Like, it's just ridiculous. So I just want to read this passage because like I said, there's very little information about Evelyn Hernandez on the internet. And I'm sorry if my glasses are blurry and disgusting. I just don't feel like getting up again. So I'm not going to clean them. It's gross, I know. One of the articles is called A Tale of Two Killings. And it's by a woman named Beth Spotswood. And I thought she said this so poignantly, so I decided that I wanted to quote her and reread it in the video. So here we go. Several reports state that Aguilera's wife provided his alibi. Presumably, this means that she claimed Aguilera was with her the day Hernandez and her son were thought to have gone missing. Facts surrounding this alibi aren't clear. In contrast, the most minuscule details surrounding the disappearance of Peterson have been established, right down to her last Trader Joe's receipt. Like, they let big let me get my fan. Because that quote says it all. Like, in Evelyn Hernandez's case, they let big swaths of information go unreported, unfollowed up on, unconcluded, no, just like it could be this or it could be that, just very nuanced. They left things in a gray area with Evelyn's case. Oh, he said that the wife said that he was with her. That's enough for us. He stopped cooperating. Well, that's fine. He puts a missing persons report 6 days after the last time she was seen alive by any other person. That's cool. All of these big swaths of information that are key into a murder, potential murderous, kidnapping, rape, sexual assault, all types of cases. Big swaths of needed information are gone followed up on. And we know Laci Peterson's what her contents of her last Trader Joe's receipt was. Her last Trader Joe's purchase before she went missing. We know that receipt. That is something the public knew. That is something that was reported on. The most minuscule things about Laci Peterson's case were huge news that people would dissect. Hours of news time. Her last Trader Joe's receipt was this and this. Do you think she knew that this, and this? You know how they sensationalize this. We've lived through a couple of Laci Petersons after Laci Peterson. We know what the fuck the drill is. But big parts of Evelyn's case were just like, oh, yeah, the wife made the alibi and then he stopped cooperating. Anyway, on to the next. Oh, she missed her due date, but she probably ran away to El Salvador to be with her family because her life's a mess in America. Huh? People, she said it best. She barely got on her local newspaper, people. Her story barely got onto the local news. And that's my point. It's not about, to me, when you compare these two cases, right, you can't remove race from the conversation. You can't remove marginalization from the conversation. Because on their head, and what I love about the comparison between the two of these cases is that they're very similar cases. These women were pregnant. These women were pregnant by men that did not, who were stepping out in one way or another. They were pregnant by men who did not want to enjoy this pregnancy with them. Their situation was rockier than the public knew, and they were both murdered by these men. In my opinion, this guy obviously did it. I don't see how he wouldn't be able to do it. Her wallet was found by his work, come on. So it's like, it's just unfortunate because people can try and argue me down. Please put your opinions down below about my take on this. But it's like, in this particular case, all the details are so similar, even to the location geographically, that it's hard to just be like, well, it wasn't because Laci was white and Evelyn was, a Latinx. No. How else? There's no other way to explain it. She was a marginalized woman. This woman was not so much so. And the cases were treated completely differently. Okay, so I'm just gonna I want to read another one of Betsy I want to read another one of Beth Spotswood quotes. And in the same article, A Tale of Two Killings, I'm going to read another quote of hers, which I think is really poignant to kind of close this whole situation out. Okay. Beth Spotswood says, by its own admission, Hernandez's hometown paper, the San Francisco Chronicle, published 32 stories about Peterson in the months between her disappearance and the arrest of Scott Peterson. 32 stories, including 4 front-page stories. The same paper, the hometown where Evelyn was living at the time. The paper published only 4 stories on Hernandez, and none of them made it to the front page. Not a single one was a front page story. Like, 32 stories versus 4 front page stories and reports for Laci, and 4 stories total, none of them on the front page about Evelyn's situation. The disparities are glaring. This is where Evelyn lived. This isn't even where, yes, Laci was in the Bay Area, but she didn't live in San Francisco proper. Evelyn lived in San Francisco proper, and her hometown, where she lived, put 4 stories out on her, and none of them were front page. She fucking washed up by Fisherman's Wharf, and 4 stories were done on her, and none of them were front page. Please, miss me with it. For real. Fight with your mother about it. Betsy Spotswood continues by saying, in the fall of 2017, A&E aired a multi-part documentary series on the Laci Peterson case. 15 years after her solved murder, Laci Peterson is still worthy of hours of primetime coverage. Underscore the solved murder. Hernandez's case is still considered open and active by the San Francisco Police Department. If he is still alive, Alexis is 22 years old, really 25, and Hernandez's unborn baby would have been 17, meaning 20. So this article itself was written in 2017. That's why I changed the ages. So Alexis now would have been 25 like me, and the unborn baby that obviously we know didn't survive because, you know, of how Evelyn was found, would have been 20 at this time. Do you spot the difference? Do I need to lay it out even more for you? Like, that sums it up. That sums it up. I think that, you know, this case is a perfect example of why I wanted to make this channel. I think that I've said that enough throughout this video, but I hope that it's made clear to everybody the disparities that marginalized people go through when it comes to calling the police, when it comes to being taken seriously by the police. There will be more stories where this is a theme with the police and not taking it serious. So stay tuned for that. But there's more at stake. There's more at play. And it's important that we continue and we try to prioritize stories. Of course, you'll get clicks if we talk about Laci Peterson because people want to rehash that story. Of course, you'll get clicks if we talk about Casey Anthony or John Benet Ramsey or even Lorena Bobbitt. You know what I mean? Of course. Because people remember that time. It's nostalgic. They remember the case. All of these things are connected to the why these stories are household names even now, and why they're able, like Beth said in her article, Tale of Two Killings, why she is still worthy of an hour of primetime coverage and other stories just never get told. It's more than 20 years later at this point. It's 20 years later. It's about to be 20 years later at this point. And her case is still open and active. And the real question now, and the question that I pose to the true crime community is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? It's time for these stories to see the light of day. It's time to get traction behind these stories. It's so important because there's still family connected to this woman that have no justice. Like Beth said, Laci Peterson's case is solved. Put the Laci Peterson script down and research a script that hasn't been done before. Bring attention to a script, to a story, to a true crime situation about a marginalized person that has never seen the light of day. Be the person to break the story instead of following the wave of the true crime community, which is rehashing and rehashing and rehashing the same 10 stories in perpetuity. Let's grow up. Let's take an active role in this space, and let's hold ourselves accountable to not playing into this missing white woman syndrome thing. Let's push against it and try to equalize the playing field and tell stories and inform people about stories, because you never know where it could go. You never know who has a missing link of information that could tell us anything about Evelyn Hernandez and what happened to her or her final days. It's time that we grow up. Respectfully. So, yeah, I think that's it. I hope that you obviously enjoyed in the sense of, the story itself and how I told it, and not that this happened to someone. I don't know why I have to say that. But please like and comment down below your opinions about the Evelyn Hernandez case, about the Laci Peterson case. Comment below if you ever heard about this case before. Obviously, interacting with this video is really great. It'll boost me in the algorithm, and I'll be able to spend time making more videos for you guys like this. Without further ado, Black Lives Matter and free Palestine until it's backwards. Love you.